All right. Hello. Welcome back to another Wet Ink Wednesday. And today, whenever you listen, I have Michele Lee on the other side of my screen. And Michelle's a writer, fiction writer, and a role-playing game contributor, designer. Written, I was thinking about it, Michelle. Uh, I think you've written for basically every one of our games, or for all the plus one games for sure, except
Mhm.
Tenebria. So like,
Yeah,
you've been what even Wild Skies. You did some stuff on Wild Skies. You've been with
yep.
Wedding since basically the beginning. So it's great to have you back to talk to you.
It's
What,
great to be here.
oh, and so I think the last time I talked to you was like in 2020, which was a
Mhm.
while ago now. So what have you
Mhm.
been up to in the nerdyverse in the last couple years? Other
A
than
lot
writing
of
all those adventures for wedding games, I mean.
a lot of my nerdyverse has been I've been focusing a lot more on just my day job, which is in the medical field. So I've really been focusing a lot on expanding my skills in that community and everything. I actually have a professional in the meat world, professional world article that has been recently accepted and will be coming out.
Oh, all
So
right.
I will be a published professional in the veterinary world as well
Oh, well,
soon.
that'll be nice.
Yeah.
I
Um,
you don't get to put letters after your name for that, but I guess just the letters WRITIER, you know.
yeah.
I think I had an extra
But
I in there, but
I have been writing for and running. I'm going to be running at Gen Con this coming weekend
yeah.
for you guys. I am enjoying the heck out of it. In the private, my personal writing, I'm leaning because I'm doing so much with my day job. I'm leaning towards a lot of smut and romance and just general, very fluffy, fun stuff instead of super serious stuff.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, yeah,
Well, it's you're not the only one. I think there's a lot
yeah,
of people who've been craving that and producing it and consuming it. So yeah, it's you're on trend
yeah.
for sure. Well, great. Thanks for all of that. I also know one thing that you did. You were on like talking about being like professional and like getting, so the into the industry or whatever in various industries. I know you were on a podcast, and I mean, this is like obviously everybody that I know can. They don't have to go through me to talk to each other, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'm like, oh, this podcast that I listen to, it has Michelle is on it as a guest. Amazing. Like, I don't know if you want to say anything about that or like,
Well, that was, I believe it was the Darker Days radio
yeah,
show
Darker
with
Days Radio.
Crystal. Is it Mazer?
Yeah,
Okay. We don't talk last names very often or how to pronounce them. So,
it
but
is,
yeah, with
but you got it
Crystal,
right.
I was part of the podcast on imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's out there. I it was so fun to hear you on that show because the you because you came from the other direction, right? Where you were like people were like, "Oh, I can make a random roll table and like tell you to do a D20 and it's fine, but you like tell me to write like about someone's feelings and I don't know how to do it, you know?" And then you were like,
Mhm.
but I used to do novels and I still do novels, so like I am fine with all of that stuff." So I don't know. It was great to
And I have a tendency to feel that a lot of that stuff isn't like my fiction isn't the serious stuff because it's not the stuff that's I've been done most of my networking about the last couple of years, like working at Gen Con and everything. I'm there as a tabletop role playing game, content
right.
producer and represent running the games and everything. So it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I also write, romance. I also write science fiction. It seems like it's just two completely different worlds.
But you
So
need to
I
have your
feel like,
like they're
yeah,
not that separate. Like you need to have your like little backpack and you're like you talk to somebody and be like, I also have these science fiction novels for sale, like
yeah,
or whatever. Or the
yeah.
romance ones.
I feel like they're just all just these really separate worlds. The thing is too is as especially when we wrote Heckin' Good Doggos, um, I started talking about what I was writing in some of the online veterinary groups that I'm part of,
Hmm.
there was a lot of people who were really into it and who really enjoyed a role playing game where you play dogs. So it's always, it doesn't occur to me that there's going to be a lot of crossover between all these worlds.
Yeah, I think there.
Yeah.
It. I mean, it's like you can never guarantee, right? I guess that's the thing. You can never guarantee that it's going to be that there's going to be crossover, but
Mhm.
every nerd. There's very few truly professional nerds. Like most people are nerds as well as other things, like
Right.
veterinary workers and I don't know, engineers and all kinds of things. I'm not going to name all the jobs, right?
Yeah.
But people have their day jobs, and so like when you hit somebody that's like, "Ooh, I do happen to be a Romanist historian, and so like this RPG that is about Rome. Let me look at it." And like,
Mhm.
oh, the armor is correct, or I don't know that that's actually ever occurred to me, but like, or it happened in real life, but it's always there that it could. Um, so it's fun to make those connections. Do you know of any? Were you able to anybody tell you that like, oh yes, I went and got the game and read it and I've played it and enjoyed it, like from your
They were
veterinary
definitely,
world?
can I have the link to this? I want to go purchase this. I want to get my kids into it. Or
Yeah.
yeah. And did you know that there is a veterinarian specific version of Cards Against Humanity?
I did not know
There
that, but
is,
I'm
yeah,
not
there is.
surprised.
It's called Veterinarians Against Humanity. It's all
Yeah.
veterinarian themed. Mm-hmm.
I bet I've seen those kind of things before. I bet they're fun to
Mm-hmm.
play with the right crowd, because then
I bet.
you get the the maximum benefit of like the crossover.
Yeah.
Um all right, so we were talking about doggos already, and I wanted to ask you about doggos. And uh I mean, basically, like your work is in the core book, and as the super good doggos section. And
Mm-hmm.
why of all the things did you want to do superheroes, like superheroes and dogs? Like what put that idea into your head back a couple of years ago now when you wrote it?
I've kind of always been a big superhero fan ever since, I was, I think, 4 or 5, and I convinced my mom to let me wear my underoos, my Wonder Woman underoos as my Halloween costume.
I
So
mean,
I've
that's
always
basically the
been,
costume.
yeah, yeah. So I've always really been into superheroes. And there is a combination between being like an author and really looking at them not just as entertainment, but as
Mm,
the process of writing them and everything, that I have always, it's one of the areas I've always remained a fan in and never taken professional. Like I've never written for comic books or anything. So, but you still have that writer brain and you're like, oh, how would I make this work in a world where there's superpowers? So it was really interesting to me, I think, a nice practice to try to make it fun, but not like horribly goofy to where people just couldn't even take it seriously.
yeah, I think you did strike a good balance. So like with you had your all your list of like powers, and then you had the and people who've looked at the book will know this, but like you had your like cast of characters, right, where it's like here's like the
Mm-hmm.
super friends, and here's the super bado friends, or whatever. And it's a mix of characters and stuff like that. Like you want to build that superhero team, so I can really see that sort of like a problem solving sort of part of writing at work there behind that part of the doggos thing. um and I will tell you that somebody came by the booth, and it was, I mean, I don't know if you know Lucas Zellers. He just did the Book of Extinction. Was just crowdfunded, but he was there looking at it, and he was like, "Oh, I love that they've got the like you put the superhero names, or not the superhero names, the like species names. They're all like Canis Familias, but then like it's like X. I don't even remember any of them, but it's like Exo Planetarius or whatever. Like
Yeah.
they're all the different kinds of super. They're all dogs, but they're all the different kinds of you know subspecies or whatever names.
Mm-hmm.
So he really appreciated that as like a touch to again the I don't know, the reality of it or whatever. So
Yeah.
anyway, pass on that thumbs up
Well,
from him.
you, Brandon, and I all were in the same Latin class in high school, so that is really that's still some of that influence coming
That's
through in my writing.
I right. The number of magic cards that happen to have Latin words on them was always a great fallback for me because we were supposed to bring in Latin words every week,
We
and I'm
did.
like, I just happen to have this card in my bag right here. Yeah, I meant to bring it in all week.
We had a like on Fridays, I think it was, our teacher would have us bring in real world representations of Latin still being used, and I very commonly brought in comic books.
Sure.
Yeah, especially Magneto's always calling mutants Homo superior, and that is Latin.
There you go. There you go. All right. So we're ostensibly here we also want to talk about raccoons. And so I know you've got I don't know, like on your social medias, you've got kind of like a garden witch kind of vibe. You talk about walking in the woods as soon as you can, or every chance you can. So like I imagine you have run into some real life raccoons at some point.
Yes.
So I mean, it's I don't know if there's some reason why you don't want to share your best one or whatever. What's a story, a memorable story, a
Well,
real life
I can,
raccoon encounter?
okay, I can share my absolute best one. So several years ago, springtime in Louisville, uh, I go to pick up a friend for role playing day, and I happen to notice that there's a raccoon laying outside of his house. We had storms that morning, so I go and look at it, and it's having problems moving. Raccoons are very nocturnal, so I think maybe it's sleepy. It's not like maybe it's sick, but maybe it's just sleepy. We had my partner and I at the time had priorly had a bat for a day where it just turned out that it was disoriented because it was daylight and it was in a parking garage. So that night we let it loose. So I think raccoon, probably the same thing. So you don't handle stuff like that with your bare hands. So I happen to have a box for Goodwill in my vehicle, and in it was some of those, my kids were outgrowing their like little kid stuff, and there was a sleeping bag, a Kung Fu Panda sleeping bag. So I wrapped the raccoon in the Kung Fu Panda sleeping bag, and I don't want it like to get loose and go crazy. So I wrap it up and I keep it on my lap, and I drive home with a raccoon wrapped up on a wild, completely wild raccoon wrapped up on my lap, so I can feel if it's moving. But once it's
And you're
wrapped up, it
driving,
kind
right?
of,
At this
yeah, I am driving
Okay, okay.
with a wild raccoon on my lap.
So just so we have
Um,
the mental picture.
yes. Um, so I can feel if it starts to move or panic or anything, I can pull over. Well, it doesn't. In fact, once it's wrapped up, it seems to be more relaxed. So great. We take it home. I put it in a cat carrier. We wait until night, and then my daughter and I take it out. We let it go, and it goes as per normal. It we just opened up the door and backed away, and it pulled itself out of the blanket and made a run for it. So I mean, mission accomplished, but
Yeah.
probably random person grabbing a wild raccoon and driving down 264 with it on her lap. Probably not the best move on my part, but I got the job done and it ended well. So
Right.
I can't regret it.
Right. That the tales that raccoon will tell when it tells all its I don't know, pack mates. What do raccoons live in? Um uh
Little families.
yeah, yeah. Um yeah, so that's pretty good. That's pretty direct, pretty direct interaction with a raccoon. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Um yeah, I certainly can't top it. So so you've got this in your history, and so
Yes.
like then the project is coming up that's like, hey, we need some writers to work on this thing. Would you be interested in doing dumpster delving sort of fantasy classes, but with raccoons. And I feel like you probably didn't have to think too long about it, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, what's the I don't know, what's that take me to that moment. Like you're like, what's your thought? You're like, I know what I
Oh,
want
there
to
was
do.
the only thought was yes, yes, I want to do this. I mean, you've asked me to write an adventure, and I've had a hard time picking just one. You know,
Yeah, well, I so we can start with that because I want to hear about all the pieces that you're contributing to the project. So like what are I mean, I guess, uh, what's on idea that you have that may make it to adventure for.
so it's not uncommon working in a veterinary clinic for people, well-meaning people, to bring you wildlife, very often that have been blown out of trees and stuff like that. One of my former coworkers and I have taken care of several squirrels. Squirrels are a really common one. And she ended up taking it and releasing it out into the wild. Birds, bunnies, those are all ones that the bat.
Right.
Um, and while there are some technical questions about it, like you're supposed to be a certified wildlife rehabber and everything. Unfortunately, a lot of what we get are animals that really aren't compatible with life. And so we do agree to, humanely euthanize them so that they don't have to just wait until they go naturally. But knowing so many people who are almost rabidly into any kind of animal welfare really made me think of one of the creatures that I've written up, the idea of almost feral humans,
Mm,
like the scientists that are out collecting samples from Beargrass Creek, and the off the gridders who are out there trying to live off the grid, and even living in Kentucky, you tend to know most people know people who hunt. A lot of hunters are not how the media portrays them. They are very much attuned with the well-being of the wildlands. It is an unfortunate fact that hunting season exists because deer can be very destructive, and them being overpopulated can lead to lots of spread of or an increased spread of various diseases and conditions that can begin to affect other animals. So anyone who, like most of, I have friends who are park rangers and field wardens. So that, again, all of this just fed into the idea of, like, yes, there are going to be humans who are going to be chasing raccoons and standing in their way, but there are going to be raccoons too, or there are going to be humans too, who are going to be like meeting these raccoons and just being Steve Irwin to them. Oh, aren't you beautiful? Yeah, I'm just going to help you get across this river and put you back down. And I'm sure that it would be very boggling to raccoons when they can't immediately recognize humans as either friend or foe.
yeah.
So my adventure is a rescue adventure wherein the players have to rescue one of their compatriots from a wildlife rehab facility.
All right. That like yeah, so then you put the like I mean, is it like I mean it's more like the dungeon crawl aspect of it then kind of comes in with like the big hallways and the giants are there and like are it's what are the intentions and like the communication isn't going to be great. Yeah, it's
Right.
that's a
But
yeah.
the giants are also like, none of the giants are actually a danger, like a physical danger to them. They're there to not hurt the animals. They're there to take animals who can't live in the wild anymore and keep them healthy and happy,
Right.
you know
Right. They become
or rehab them and
you
then let
know
them loose again.
right, they become animal ambassadors, right? Then
Yes.
you get to show them off at to the middle schools and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of
And
stuff.
then I'm sure also raccoons would think that any kind of human zoo is probably just really weird. Why would humans want to keep an owl? Why would humans want to have cages full of squirrels? Like, what?
Right.
I can imagine them trying to puzzle that out.
Yeah. I mean, I I really like all of this. This is good. So I can't wait to see I look forward to the final form of this
Mhm.
adventure when we can deliver it to the people who are backing the game right now, as this video airs. Uh, so I want to ask you some more about, did you work on any of the classes for the different like parts of the
I did
game?
this. I did the magic.
Yeah, you did the magic.
So I wrote the. I didn't do any of the classes, but I wrote all
Okay,
the spells,
right,
and I have a nice little pile of further spells that
right,
I've
right.
got notes on that can come out should we hit certain.
Sure. Uh,
Yeah.
um, because yeah, I mean, we're trying to keep. I mean, that was definitely like a note from me where you're like, I've got 50 things, and I was like, we don't need 50. Like, let's keep it a little smaller to start.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I mean, I know you play D&D, or you play the classic game, the classic fantasy games. What I mean, I know I was like, let's do like the wizard learning type spells, and let's do like the divine sort of cleric type spells, and then let's do like the general spells. Over sort of like my direction. So like, I don't know, what did you pull from which, and thinking about like how to make that into like raccoon terms, I guess, as far as like, I mean, what's learned or sacred to raccoons? Does that make sense? Like what puts the spells in each category or whatever.
So I've written spells and stuff before. I really focused on their usefulness. Like, I think one of the flaws that you see in a lot of media is the spells are all fireball and lightning bolts and things that are very flashy and very obviously magic. I think in the real world, if we had magic, we'd have a lot more make water instantly boil, make the cheese that's grown mold not be moldy anymore, feed the dog so you don't have to get up. I think we'd have a lot more of those kinds of small convenience
It'd
magics.
be all
And
cantrips.
yeah, yeah. I mean, really, yes, Firebolt would be awesome. And certainly we'd see a lot of that on TikTok, I think. But the things that people would want
Oh
to
my.
learn are the things that would directly benefit them
Yeah.
more. We're a very short attention span species right now. And so I imagine that from what I know about raccoons, they have an even shorter attention span. The former coworker that I worked with the squirrels, she had a raccoon for about 3 years. So I've never had one for long term. I'm not sure that I would, even if I could, because they are like larger, smarter ferrets.
Yeah. I mean,
They,
I've been watching a lot of
I'm
videos, and they're all fun, and to see them waddle around in your house, but like, I can't, those hands and those claws, and they're not small. They're
yeah,
like,
they're not
they're
as small as you would think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it would be a challenge to have them in your house, like to live
She said
harmoniously.
she said that her raccoon uh, would steal anything shiny or that made noise, which was one of those things that would always steal was her car keys
Yeah, I bet.
and would hide it somewhere. So anytime she wanted to go anywhere, she had to ask the raccoon to give her back the keys.
Oh man. And
Because there was no putting up high enough, there was no putting it in a purse or a box or a cabinet.
sure, it would
She
just
just
open it.
had
It
she just had to trade back. You can have a treat if you give me back my keys.
Wow.
And the raccoon knew.
Yeah, I bet. Oh man, like I mean, I got rabbits, and they're like, they know the time of day it is, and they're looking at you when you haven't given them the treat on time. But like, how much more is like, oh, but it could climb and vocalize and has hands. Like it would just be,
Yeah,
yeah, it's yeah, okay, yeah, here's the treat.
yeah.
Like take it, give me. I got to go to the car. Like did you know if it knows? Did it learn the word car or like what? How did that transaction happen?
I'm not sure how it actually became to that point, but like it, yeah, she learned specifically that those keys are what she wanted to, that she needed those keys to leave.
Hmm.
Maybe she didn't know why, like she didn't know that it operated the car, but she
Right,
definitely knew when they wanted to go somewhere, they needed those keys,
and then I could trade
and
them.
she had to trade them.
That's 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 another incredible raccoon story. This is the bonus
Yeah.
raccoon story. I asked you about
Well,
your.
that's not mine.
Oh, I
That's
know,
just
I
that was
know, but
hers.
this
Yeah,
it's a
but yeah,
pretty good ad. All right. So we could probably keep talking about raccoons. I have no idea how long this recording has gone for, but I want to ask you before we do like the socials and the outro and stuff like that. Is there any other thing you want to talk to about the game, or anything else that you're excited to see, or any other things you want to say about
we have so many projects that I've been excited for all of them. I'm really excited. I'll be every year I run at least one Never Going Home game
it?
at
Hmm.
Gen Con. I have had the same person come and play 3 years in a row, the same game, so he can play it a different way.
Wow, that's
Uh,
that's cool.
Last year, I had a group of people from Australia who have actually been to Europe and toured all these areas that we talk about.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely amazing because not only could they give us, the other players, a lot of information that, the American public school system kind of failed us on, but also you just mentioned something and all of a sudden their faces would fall and they're like, oh my God, it happened there. That's where we are. And it just added so much tension to the game.
Hmm.
I also
That's
ran
cool.
two heckin' good doggos games last year. I ran one that was mundane and one that was superheroes. The superheroes was a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. So that was over the top, outright laughing our butts off fun.
I I
It
bet. I
it
bet.
really was.
I I often uh yeah, hanging at doggos brings out the comedy, but I can imagine like kids doing superheroes would be the next that would be up there in the level.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So I get to run Psychic Kids for the first time this year. So I'm looking forward to that because I grew up on, you know, uh, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I liked horror, but like kind of softer horror, not like gore horror. And LJ Smith, who did the Vampire Diaries, also had a series that was exactly about that. It was about a group of kids with powers who are recruited for
Okay.
living at this facility. It
Yeah.
turns out that, and then they end up escaping.
Well,
It is,
there you
yeah,
go. You could.
that's exactly what it is. So
So I
yeah,
assume
so that was,
you just like pulling from that and then getting to
oh
play that
yeah.
basically. Okay.
And
That's
to be honest, growing up, I fantasized about being in that kind of situation or, being recruited into the X-Men. That's
uh,
really something I wanted to do.
sure. Who hasn't thought about what their power would be if they were
Talking to animals. That
yeah,
was my power. That was always my power.
you
Talking
know,
to animals.
I'm gonna date myself so horribly by mentioning Wizard magazine, but there was a Wizard magazine and they had an interview and they asked like some artist what his power would be, and he said he wanted prehensile hair. And so that's the one that I always remember and think of
That's
because
funny because
I've had long
that,
hair for years, for like since high school. So like I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
I too, artist whose name I can't remember, would like the prehensile hair. That was
I empathize with that a great deal. When my role playing group jokingly wrote each other up in the old school, the classic Marvel game, where you roll on the chart with
mhm.
a percentile dice. They always, every single one of them gave me prehensile hair.
There you
So
go.
that's,
There you go.
yes.
All right. Well, great. There's a preview of or a review of Gen Con and as well. Michelle, thank you so much for talking to me today about raccoons and all the other things all the other uh writing that you do, and all the places where you got your fingers in the pies, the fingers in lots of pies. Um, great. So tell people where they can find more about you on the internet. If you want, assuming you want to be found, where can people
Yes.
find more about
I
you and
am
your writing?
my underwhelming website is at michellelee.net. I generally go by the handle the other Michele Lee because I'm not that famous one.
Yeah.
On other social media like Instagram and stuff like that. Um, my Instagram is largely just pictures of cool stuff I find and the books I read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I try to keep at the very least on my webpage. I try to say, "Hey, this thing has come out. Hey, this Kickstarter's running." So I try to keep up with that at the very least. But it also has a list of all the projects I've written for and all my books that are currently available.
Awesome. One-stop shop. Great.
Yeah,
Right. So again, thank you for your time, and we will. I'll see you at the con.
I will see you then.
Thanks everybody for watching this video.
Bye.
Bye.